I think I've produced 5 movies with Emma Thompson now, and in every single one she plays a completely different character. I never really know who she's going to be when she shows up. Even when she wrote the scripts, I wasn't really sure how she would play the part. She's always funny. It doesn't matter what she's playing. She figures out a way to how to be funny in it, and that's exactly what we needed for Harbottle, of somebody who could be really, really entertaining to an audience and very, very scary to the police officer, to some of the other characters who interact with her. She doesn't care how rude she is, and yet she's a really enjoyable character. At our previews, when we've done previews of the movie, we've noticed how many people say she's one of their very favorite characters because she's so entertaining and so unexpected as a lawyer whose role in the movie is to be the shepherd's lawyer who has to come to town and read the will. It's a very classic Agatha Christie kind of situation, but she just brings a lot of authority to it and a lot of humor. She's very funny, and this character Tim that he plays, Officer Tim, has a real arc. He starts out, George the shepherd identifies him as an idiot. He looks like an idiot. Everybody treats him as an idiot. Nobody has any respect for him whatsoever. And yet he grows into a real cop, into a real detective over the course of the story with the help of the sheep, which is very confusing to him. And we just loved him. He did an English accent, which was so convincing that a lot of the people in the crew, when I didn't know that Nicholas Braun was English because he just convinced them that he was English. But it seemed, again, he has a good English face that seemed to work for the movie. So, and he was a complete delight to work with. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is great at playing the ultimate sheep detective. There's a lot of funny dialogue for Lily that Julia Louis-Dreyfus was the perfect one to play. She was one of the first people I thought of. Actually, I listened to her podcast, and so I'm very used to hearing just her voice. And that voice was in my head for a really long time for this character. And it was someone that Craig Mazin specifically loved for this character. So she gave us every inch of humor that this character had. But when it gets really emotional, she gave us all of that. When Lily has to realize that she's been a show-off and she's been really proud of herself and she thought that she could solve this mystery in 24 hours and it turns out that simply isn't true. She has to go through a really dark night of the soul over the course of this movie. And she gave us all of that. I know for a lot of people, it's rare to work on a movie that's a mixture of laugh out loud comedy and emotional drama, but for me, that's all I want to do. There are very few movies that I've produced that are not both really, really funny and really, really emotional. To me, that is what a movie has the opportunity to give you. Audiences are so grateful when you give them the whole thing. They're so grateful to be watching an emotional drama that also makes them laugh. They're so grateful to be watching a laugh out loud comedy that makes them cry. If you can see a movie that makes you laugh and makes you cry and makes you think, to me, that is the full gamut of what a movie can do. And that's what this movie does, I think, in spades. I've seen it now with preview audiences. They laugh and laugh and laugh. They identify it as a comedy, and yet they cry and cry and cry, sometimes from sadness, sometimes from happiness. It's the full range of entertainment, and I think that's what we owe them. Figuring out how to work with the wonderful people at Framestore, specifically Graham Page, to make these sheep as real as they could possibly be, but not so real that you don't feel the human emotions coming through, you don't feel the human humor coming through. So it's remarkable now that the sheep are beginning to be finished. It's just remarkable. You say, how can that face be a real sheep face and yet have emotions that are so subtle, or indications of something that are so subtle? Somebody saying something to somebody almost without looking at them, sort of. Lily shows off a lot. She's a real show off, and at the beginning she's a real show off, and then in the middle of the movie she begins to realize she doesn't know as much as she thought she did. There's incredibly detailed and subtle versions of her expressions and Sebastian's expressions and Moppel's expressions as they go through the eventual, you know, all of the emotions of this movie. And it's all there in the sheep faces. When people watch The Sheep Detectives, I hope they take away that they had a wonderful time, that they laughed, that they cried, that it gave them things to think about, that the drama didn't get in the way of the comedy and the comedy didn't get in the way of the drama, that they've had a full experience at the movies that wasn't just laughter, wasn't just tears, wasn't just drama, but that it was everything that you can have from a movie. That's what we set out to do, and I hope that that's what people get.